Hello, everyone, and welcome to our podcast. Imagine you wake up tomorrow morning, open your banking app on your mobile phone, and the screen shows a total balance of zero. You look inside your wallet, and all your paper bills and shiny metal coins have completely turned into dust. You run to the grocery store, and you see that nobody can buy milk or bread because credit cards do not work and cash does not exist anymore. Today, we are going to talk about a massive, thought-provoking question. What if money disappeared tomorrow? We will discuss how this incredible event would affect our daily survival, our local communities, and the global economy. We will look at how we would get our food, how we would trade with our neighbors, and whether a world without money would make us happier or cause total confusion. We have an expert in economics and human history here with us today to guide us through this fascinating mental journey. Let us begin our conversation now.
Thank you so much. It is wonderful to be here today to talk about this huge idea. Money is something we use every single hour of our lives, but we rarely think about what it actually is. Money is just an agreement. It is a tool that we all trust to make trading easy. If money suddenly vanishes tonight, that trust breaks down instantly. On the very first morning, the world would experience a massive shockwave. People would walk to their regular jobs, like driving a bus, teaching at a school, or baking bread, and they would ask themselves why they should work if they are not getting paid. The immediate result would be a total pause in society. Gas stations would close, trains would stop moving, and electricity companies would wonder how to keep the power running when nobody can pay the monthly bill. It would feel like a giant machine has suddenly lost its power source.
That first morning sounds incredibly chaotic. If the giant machine stops, the most urgent problem is survival. How would a regular family get food for dinner if they cannot use money at the supermarket?
That is the absolute first challenge humanity would have to solve. In our modern world, most people do not grow their own food. We live in cities, and we rely completely on truck drivers and store owners to bring food to us. If money disappears, supermarkets would quickly become empty because people would run in to take whatever they could find out of fear. After that initial panic, communities would have to return to a very ancient system called the barter system. Barter simply means trading one item directly for another item without using money. For example, if you have a large garden with a lot of extra tomatoes, and your neighbor has a couple of chickens that lay eggs, you can walk over to their house. You can ask them if they will give you 6 fresh eggs in exchange for a big basket of your red tomatoes. This works well for simple things, but it gets complicated very fast.
I can see how that would get complicated. What happens if my neighbor does not want my tomatoes? What if they already have enough tomatoes and want something else instead?
That is exactly the main flaw of the barter system. Economists call this the coincidence of wants. If your neighbor wants a new pair of leather shoes, but you only have tomatoes, you cannot make a trade. You would have to find a shoemaker, trade your tomatoes for a pair of shoes, and then take those shoes back to your neighbor to finally get your eggs. This process takes a lot of time and a lot of walking. Because of this difficulty, people would quickly start using a new kind of unofficial money. In history, whenever regular money disappeared, humans found clever substitutes. People have used shiny seashells, dried tobacco leaves, bags of salt, or blocks of chocolate as currency. On our imaginary day without money, people might start using small bottles of water, cans of soup, or batteries as a temporary form of cash because everyone always needs water, food, and energy.
So humans would naturally create a new type of money anyway. Our brains just want a simple way to trade. What about our houses and apartments? How would rent and mortgages work if money is gone?
The entire housing market would freeze instantly. Landlords who own big apartment buildings would not be able to collect paper rent. If they tried to evict their tenants, the tenants would have nowhere to go, and the police would be too busy managing the streets to help. In a positive scenario, landlords and tenants might come to a direct, helpful agreement. A tenant who is a plumber might offer to fix all the broken pipes in the building in exchange for living in their apartment for free. A tenant who is a teacher might offer to tutor the landlord's children in math and reading. People would have to pay for their shelter using their direct skills and physical labor. This would make relationships between people much more personal, but it would also mean that if you do not have a practical, immediate skill, you would find it very hard to pay for your living space.
That would put a lot of pressure on people to learn manual skills like building, cooking, or repairing things. Let us look at the workplace. What happens to large corporations and modern office jobs?
Most modern office jobs would completely disappear within a single week. Think about what a lot of people do in offices today. They manage computer databases, they do digital marketing, they analyze financial trends, or they write software for banking systems. All of those jobs exist only to support the movement of money. If money does not exist, a marketing specialist cannot sell an abstract digital service because people only care about physical goods like potatoes, shoes, and warm blankets. Large corporations would break down because you cannot manage a factory with 10,000 workers using the barter system. You cannot give every car factory worker 5 car tires at the end of the week and tell them to go trade those tires for their grocery items. The economy would become much smaller, much more local, and focused entirely on basic human needs.
It sounds like a massive shift back to an agricultural lifestyle. We would see a lot more small farms and local workshops. What would happen to our technology, like smartphones, laptops, and the internet?
Technology would face a very dangerous moment. The internet requires huge amounts of electricity, constant repairs, and massive underwater cables to work. The people who maintain the internet need food, clothing, and safety. If there is no money to support the global supply chain, it becomes almost impossible to manufacture a new smartphone. A smartphone requires rare metals from Africa, microchips from Asia, software from America, and assembly lines in Europe. Without money as a global bridge, that international cooperation stops completely. If your current phone breaks, you would not be able to buy a new one. The internet might stay active for a few weeks or months because of automated systems, but eventually, as parts break down and nobody is there to fix them, the digital world would grow dark. We would have to communicate using paper letters and local bulletin boards again.
That would feel like stepping back into the 19th century. No internet would mean no social media, no streaming videos, and no instant messaging. Let us look at the social side of this. Would crime increase because people are desperate, or would crime decrease because there is nothing to steal?
In the very first few weeks, crime would likely increase significantly, especially in big cities. When people are hungry and afraid that their children will not have food, they will do almost anything to survive. People would break into warehouses and food storage facilities. But this crime would be about survival, not about getting rich. A thief would not steal a diamond necklace or a luxury watch because a diamond cannot be eaten and cannot be traded easily for bread in a world without money. Over time, as communities organized themselves, this type of crime would drop. Security would become local. Neighbors would form groups to protect their shared gardens and animals. Since you cannot store millions of dollars in a secret bank account anymore, wealth would become visible. Your wealth would just be your land, your cows, and your tools. It is much harder to steal a whole field of wheat than it is to steal a digital credit card number.
That makes a lot of sense. Wealth becomes physical, so you can only own what you can actually protect and use. Let us think about global governments and countries. How would a president or a prime minister lead a nation without money?
Governments would lose almost all of their power very quickly. A government operates by collecting taxes from its citizens in the form of money. It uses that tax money to pay soldiers, police officers, judges, and road builders. If money disappears, the government cannot collect taxes. If a government tries to force citizens to give them 10% of their actual vegetables or chickens, it requires an immense amount of physical effort to collect, transport, and store those items. The national military would likely break apart into smaller, local defense groups because soldiers would leave their posts to go home and protect their own families and farms. Power would shift away from giant capital cities and move down to local town leaders, mayors, and community councils who can talk directly to the people.
So the world would become a collection of small independent communities instead of massive united nations. What about human health and hospitals? How would medical care function in this new reality?
Healthcare would face terrible challenges, but also show the best part of human kindness. Doctors and nurses do their jobs because they genuinely want to heal sick people, but they also need to eat and support their own homes. In a world without money, a hospital would have to operate on a community charity model. The local baker would bring bread to the hospital, the farmer would bring milk, and the mechanic would fix the ambulance for free. In return, the doctors would treat the baker, the farmer, and the mechanic when they fall ill. However, the biggest crisis would be medicine. Just like smartphones, modern medicines and vaccines require complex chemical factories and global transport. Without money to drive that global trade, hospitals would quickly run out of advanced antibiotics, cancer treatments, and surgical tools. Medical care would become much more basic, relying on simple herbs, basic surgery, and physical rest.
That is a sobering thought. We would lose a lot of our modern life-saving capabilities. Let us look at the emotional and psychological side. Do you think people would feel more stressed or more peaceful in a world completely free of money?
This is where we see a very interesting split in human psychology. Right now, money is the #1 cause of anxiety for millions of families. People stay awake at night worrying about credit card debt, student loans, rising prices, and whether they can afford to retire. In our current system, your value as a person is often measured by the size of your bank account. If money disappears, all financial debt is completely erased in an instant. There are no more banks to call you, no more interest rates to worry about, and no more poverty based on a lack of paper bills. For many people, this would bring a profound sense of relief and mental freedom. You are finally equal to everyone else. Your neighbor might have been a millionaire yesterday, but today they are just a person standing in the mud next to you, trying to grow food.
That equality sounds beautiful in a way. It would force people to look at each other as human beings instead of looking at their wealth. But what about the negative psychological effects?
The negative side is the loss of personal comfort and choice. Money gives us an incredible amount of individual freedom. If you have $20 in your pocket right now, you can choose to spend it on a book, a movie ticket, a hot bowl of soup, or you can save it for next month. Money allows you to store your hard work today and use it anywhere in the world next year. Without money, that freedom vanishes. You can only trade with the people you can physically see. If you work hard all summer and grow 1,000 apples, you cannot save that wealth for 10 years because the apples will rot in a few weeks. You are forced to live in the immediate present. This creates a different kind of constant worry. You would always be thinking about the weather, the health of your crops, and whether your local community likes you enough to support you during a harsh winter.
So we exchange financial anxiety for survival anxiety. That sounds like a tough trade. Let us talk about education. What happens to schools and universities if money vanishes?
Education would become much more practical and hands-on. Big universities with giant classrooms and expensive research labs would close because they cannot maintain the buildings or pay the professors. However, learning would never stop because humans love to pass knowledge down to the next generation. High schools and elementary schools would likely survive as small community volunteer centers. Parents would take turns bringing food to the teachers. The subjects taught would shift away from complex financial accounting or abstract corporate business strategies. Instead, children would learn botany to understand plants, basic engineering to fix tools, chemistry to make soap, and literature to keep storytelling alive. Education would be directly connected to helping the town survive and thrive.
That sounds like a very healthy change for education. Children would see the immediate use of their lessons in real life. What about art, music, and entertainment? How would artists survive without a music industry or a movie market?
Art and music would actually experience a beautiful renaissance. Right now, the entertainment industry is heavily focused on making profit. Movies are often designed using financial data to ensure they sell millions of tickets, and musicians sometimes write songs just to get radio play and streaming numbers. In a world without money, people would still crave storytelling, music, and beauty. In fact, they would need it more than ever to find comfort during difficult times. Musicians would play instruments in the town square or at neighborhood gatherings. Actors would perform live plays in local parks. People would pay them by giving them a hot meal, a warm jacket, or a basket of fresh fruit. Art would return to its purest form, a gift shared between humans to create joy and community connection, completely free from commercial pressure.
A gift shared between humans. That is a wonderful image. It shows that our creativity does not depend on a dollar sign. If we look back at history, did any human societies live successfully without money for a long time?
Yes, absolutely. For thousands of years, early human societies lived without money. Tribes of hunters and gatherers worked together using a system called a gift economy. In a gift economy, if a hunter caught a large animal, they did not sell the meat. They shared the meat with the entire tribe because there was no way to store it before it went bad. They knew that if they were generous today, another hunter would share their catch next week when luck changed. This system relies heavily on trust, reputation, and close personal relationships. It works perfectly in small groups of 50 to 100 people where everyone knows each other's faces and names. The problem only started when human communities grew into thousands of people, making it impossible to know or trust everyone. That is why money was invented, to allow us to trade safely with complete strangers.
So money was invented to solve the problem of scale. It lets us cooperate with millions of people we will never meet. If money disappeared permanently, do you think humanity would eventually find a way to build a large, fair civilization without it, or would we always go back to creating currency?
I believe humanity would always return to creating some form of currency because our global population is simply too large to function on pure trust alone. We have 8 billion people on this planet. We need global transport to move grain from countries with extra food to countries experiencing a drought. We need complex laboratories to create global medicine. To achieve that level of massive coordination, you need a standard, common tool that measures value accurately and survives over time. If gold, paper cash, and digital credit cards disappeared tomorrow, within a year, we would find a new standard. Maybe we would all agree that a standard weight of dried wheat or a clean liter of oil represents 1 unit of value. We would build a new currency system because it is the only way to keep a massive global family connected and trading efficiently.
That is a very realistic view. Money is an invention just like the wheel or the printing press, and once an invention proves its utility, we cannot easily live without it. If you look at our current lives right now, with money fully active, how can we use the lessons from this imaginary scenario to improve our relationship with wealth today?
We can use this scenario to remind ourselves that money is just an instrument, not the final goal of life. We often spend so much time chasing numbers on a screen that we forget the things that truly matter. If money disappeared tomorrow, your digital wealth would mean nothing, but your physical health, your practical skills, your family, and your kind neighbors would mean everything. We should invest more of our energy today into building those true treasures. Learn how to grow a small plant, learn how to repair a basic tool, and spend quality time building strong, honest relationships with the people in your local neighborhood. By doing this, you protect your mental health today, and you build a beautiful, resilient life that can handle any future crisis, financial or otherwise.
That is a deeply inspiring and comforting message to take away. True wealth is not found in a wallet or a bank vault. It is found in our skills, our health, and our human connections. Thank you so much for joining our podcast today and sharing these profound and clear insights with us. You took a giant, overwhelming economic question and turned it into a deeply human story that helps us value our everyday lives much more.
It was my absolute pleasure to be here with you today. I always enjoy these discussions because they help us step back from the busy rush of modern life and see the simple foundations of our world with fresh eyes and a grateful heart. I hope all your listeners take a moment today to smile at a neighbor or appreciate a simple meal. Thank you for having me, and have a wonderful, grounded week, everyone.
What an incredible and enlightening conversation we had today. To summarize the key takeaways from our discussion, we looked at the fascinating and world-changing scenario of money completely disappearing from our planet tomorrow. We learned that while the immediate result would be massive confusion, empty supermarkets, and a sudden pause in international businesses and technologies like the internet, humanity would quickly adapt by using ancient systems like the barter system or creating new physical forms of currency out of essential items like water and food. We saw how power would shift away from giant national governments down to local town councils, and how our schools and arts would undergo a beautiful transformation, focusing directly on practical life skills and pure, creative human connection without commercial pressure. Most importantly, we discovered that money is simply a functional tool for scale, and that our truest wealth lies in things that can never turn to dust: our physical health, our practical capabilities, and the love and trust we build with the people around us. Thank you again to our wonderful expert guest, and thank you to all our amazing listeners for spending your valuable time with us today. We hope you feel inspired to appreciate the simple treasures in your life, and we'll see you in the next episode.